there, and welcome to another writing commentary. This one starting from Milan and winding up, well, you'll see. As we head off, the first thing is that we have to go on a kind of a somber note, because we're near Detroit, which is trying to recover from a devastating bankruptcy they had a few years ago, and still not quite there, and they're having many problems. But worst of all, the most recent crisis is Flint, Michigan.
It's a terrible story in its own right, because it was the last biggest American city that went bankrupt. And they're having a hard time trying to turn it around right now. I say they'll be the second biggest, because Chicago will probably go bankrupt too in a few years. It's definitely a flaw in the government. The other place where this has happened is here. The river doesn't look like much, but this is the Flint River, which is responsible somewhat for the Flint water crisis. What basically happened is they switched to start using this water for the drinking water, and they forgot to put a anti-corrosive in it, and it started to leach lead into the lines. Now, right now, there's a lot of blame going around of who's responsible for it, and it's not in the news much because it's not the political football right now, but it's still a major problem. But I think the real thing, the only reason I'm commenting on it, is because I think the blame is misplaced in some degree. The real people who are to blame are a lot of the politicians who came before in Flint. Piping isn't forever. I guarantee you any civil engineer who put the plumbing in said, well, at some point you're going to have to come back and redo this. And plastics have been a thing for over half a century. Flint was not, and they were constantly using their money instead to fund other projects or to give tax breaks or to do whatever, rather than put money away every year to start replacing their water system. These things need to be updated every so often. And they didn't. And that's where a lot of the flaw and a lot of the blame belongs, in my opinion. Now, the current crisis, yes, there's plenty of blame. But you can't blame the river. And it's hard to blame politicians, especially when they're out of office, so they get to escape it by kicking the can down the road.
See, politicians need to give people what they need, not what they want. The infrastructure needs to be taken care of first and foremost, and then they can worry about every superficial project. And just because pipes aren't seen like road doesn't mean they can be ignored forever. I wish to say Flint was the only community in this kind of predicament, but there are lots of communities that have been neglecting their systems over the years and waiting for a bigger bailout to get them out. The other thing is terrible going through Flint, and I don't know if you can tell this, is how deserted it is. It gets that Walking Dead kind of feel. These streets should be filled with people. This is like prime time morning on a weekday, and there's no one on the street, and the storefronts are all closed. It's quite literally, like, I swear, they could use this as a set for The Walking Dead. But moving on, we move on to happier things. And we hit basically Highway 23, and we're going to travel right next to Lake Huron as we move through the Michigan. It's a great ride. It's actually some of the better riding that I've had this whole time. There's nothing like moving along.
So here we are, Lake Huron. Look off in that distance, you can see some land. That's Michigan. But this is another one of the Great Lakes. I don't really know much about this lake. But I know this is the point on the trip where you start to feel how vast the country is. And there's still a long way to go.
lot of these towns have their own names, their own histories, their own events. I came across a number of boating expos and marinas all over the place. Man, everyone has their own summer vacation, summer spot here. It's just quite amazing.
If anyone out there wonders what you do when it's raining too hard to ride, you basically do this. You find a little shade off the side of the road, and you sit and you wait it out. Got a nice little beach there to look at. Give me time. Letting up so I can get back on the road soon. Here I am in the whole landscape of Upper Michigan. These are really summer-only towns. During the winter, I'm sure the population plummets. It gets too cold and too snowy. But as you can see, being on the Great Lake, you're primed for any kind of water activity. Fishing, boating, just playing on the beach. You get the fresh water of the Great Lakes. This is my first visit up here. I've been on the Great Lakes before, but never to northern Michigan. The big deal is I've just passed the 45th parallel. That's the marker that denotes halfway between the equator and the North Pole. Luckily, it's a warm summer, so I don't have to worry about much. Can't wait to continue on.
There was plenty of scenery, and when it wasn't raining, it was really good riding. Thank you for coming along. Please subscribe to see the next installment.